I approached. Enough to see through one of the windows. What I saw left me paralyzed. There were several young women gathered in a circle with Gabriel in the center. Holding what appeared to be a Bible, I was reciting something in a language I didn't understand, and I swear the girls seemed to be hypnotized. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound. Suddenly, the many stopped immediately and I heard footsteps approaching. I ran as fast as I could, not daring to look back. When I finally got home, I was shaking and trying to process what I had done. I knew I had to do something, but what could a 16-year-old boy do against someone like Gabriel? His influence was too strong and the majority of the people agreed with him. However, a part of me couldn't sit idly by. After that night on the farm, my life changed. I couldn't ignore the signs, the whispers that seemed to envelop the entire town, or Gabriel's growing influence over everyone, including my own family. However, the more I tried to warn him, the more isolated I felt. Mother said she was paranoid, that Father Gabriel only wanted the best for us. My sister Laura, although still distant and in such courageous health, insisted that the priest had helped her, that she had no one else to turn to. The lake, which had always been a quiet, serene place, had become the epicenter of rumors and fear. Some said that at night they could hear songs coming from the shore. Others spoke of a thick fog that seemed to rise from the water, and the worst was an inexplicable smell in the air. I knew that Gabriel continued to visit the lake regularly. Sometimes I saw him from afar and his figure was silhouetted against the full moon, motionless, with his arms outstretched as if he were praying, but that posture made me uneasy. It didn't seem like a sentence, but something deeper and darker. That's when I began to wonder if I was really talking to God or if something else was pouring into those waters. Over time, some villagers began to express their discontent. Don Esteban, who had always been a man respected for his wisdom and experience, he was one of the first to raise his voice at a community meeting. He stated that there was something deeply wrong with the way Gabriel was leading the church. It is not normal for a priest to spend so much time in isolation, surrounded only by young girls, much less to allow our faith to become a cult of himself. His words provoked a murmur among those present, but Gabriel, being present and always eloquent and charismatic, knew how to handle the situation with mastery. I understand your concerns. Don Esteban said. He did all this in an extremely calm voice, but everything I do is for the good of this community. If there are any doubts, I invite anyone to visit the farm and see with their own eyes the work we do. Many were convinced by his calm tone, but I could see the gleam of anger in his eyes. Gabriel was not used to being questioned and knew that this would not end well for Don Esteban. Days later, Don Esteban suddenly fell ill. No one knew what was wrong with him and his body was being consumed by unexplained fevers and aches. My father, worried, went to visit him, but came back saying that the old man could barely speak. When my mother suggested that Gabriel could help him, my father flatly refused. "I don't want that man to set foot in our house again," he said with a firmness he rarely showed. Esteban told me that he didn't want him to come near either. That night Don Esteban died. Some said it was a coincidence that his age and precarious health had done their thing, but others, including me, couldn't help but to think that his death was related to the words against Gabriel. Meanwhile, rumors about the young people who frequented the farm continued to grow. Several of them began to show signs of pregnancy and, when asked about it, avoided answering. My mother, although she was a faithful follower of Father Gabriel, began to worry, especially about Laura. "I don't want anything bad to happen to you," he told her one night while we were having dinner. "If something worries you, you have to tell me, daughter." Laura, with her eyes fixed on his plate, he just shook his head. "Father Gabriel always takes care of us. You have nothing to worry about, Mom," but her words failed to reassure us. Something about his tone was different and almost mechanical, as if he were repeating something he had taught him to say. The situation eventually attracted the attention of dioceses in the nearest town. A group of priests was sent to the village to investigate the accusations against Gabriel. When they arrived, he greeted them with a broad smile and a carefree attitude. "Of course they can. Review everything you want," he told them. "I have nothing to hide." However, as the priests conducted interviews and visited the estate, they began to find evidence that something was not right. The books Gabriel used in his lessons contained passages that did not belong to any Catholic doctrine, and several of the young women confessed to being manipulated into performing acts they described as rituals. One of them, in a fit of tears, revealed that Gabriel said that he was directly guided by the voice of God. When the priests confronted Gabriel with these evidences, he just laughed. "Are you afraid of the true faith?" he asked them. "Everything I have done has been for the good of this community. If you can't see it, maybe you need to reflect on your faith." The tension in the village reached a peak when the priest decided to inform the authorities, but before they could do so, Gabriel disappeared. He took with him 3 of the young women who had been closest to him, leaving behind him a trace of confusion and fear. The farm was searched by authorities and priests who found evidence of rituals. There were figures carved in wood, strange drawings on some walls, and a kind of improvised altar. The community was devastated. Many began to question their faith, while others simply refused to talk about it. In the weeks that followed, stories of nightmares, strange happenings began to emerge among the villagers. The women who had been involved with Gabriel, they said they felt a constant presence watching them. Several had to be exorcised by the priests who had arrived. These were the same ones who told what had happened to Gabriel when the investigation was and all the horrors they had found. I myself could not escape the impact of these events. Although I had never been close to Gabriel, his influence had forever changed the dynamics of our community. Many left the village, unable to bear the memories. My family was also affected. Laura was never the same again, and although she eventually managed to partially recover, she always carried the scars of those days with her. With the disappearance of the father, the town fell into a sepulchral silence. During the first weeks after their departure, most tried to continue with their lives, but it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. The marks of her passage through our community were present in every corner, in the empty looks of the women who had been closest to her. In the families who now doubted their faith, and in the abandoned farm that no one dared to visit. My sister Laura, who had not been among the young women who left with Gabriel, was still struggling with her own demons. As I told you, I had gone through strange episodes. Her health improved slightly, but she often woke up screaming in the night, saying something was watching her. Sometimes he would tell him that Gabriel had told him that this was going to happen, that it was going to be a test that God had put on him. I think it goes without saying that my sister Laura was one of the people who helped these priests. The release took months. At the same time, little by little more inhabitants began to talk about strange dreams and disturbing sensations. Some said that they saw Father Gabriel in nightmares. Others spoke of shadows moving between houses at night. But I think that one of those cases that I remember the most was the one that shook everyone, the one that was related to Don Esteban's family. He had been one of the few to question Gabriel openly. One morning, her youngest son screamed that someone had entered his room. When they turned on the light, they found traces of water leading from the window to the child's bed, despite locking and reinforcing the windows in this incident. It was repeated 2 more nights. My family was not immune to these events either. Apart from the situation with my sister Laura, one night while I was sleeping, I was awakened by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Thinking it was my dad, I got up to see him, but the corridor was empty. However, the door to Laura's room was ajar, and inside she could hear whispers. When I opened it, I found her sitting on her bed muttering words. When I tried to wake her up, she pushed me with a force I didn't know I had. She started screaming until my mother finally arrived to calm her down. Women who had had close relationships with Gabriel were the most affected. They said they felt a constant presence, as if something was watching them, and they had many recurring nightmares. One of the most important cases, alarming, was that of Clara, a young woman who had been one of Gabriel's most devoted followers. During her exorcism, they commented, marks began to appear on her skin as if something invisible was scratching her. The priest who carried out the ritual said that she had been possessed by one who fed on despair and guilt. Although they managed to free her, Clara was never the same again. One day he simply made the decision to go on his own. I knew I couldn't continue to live in that state of uncertainty, but that's what we were. He had played at some point. I managed to talk with Don Rafael, an old man who had lived all his life in the village. When we talked about what had happened on the farm and the situation with Father Gabriel, he told me something that made my blood run cold. That lake has always had something. My grandfather used to say that water brought restless souls and that those who heard its whispers were doomed to be lost. I believe that it was not God who spoke to Father Gabriel, it was something else, perhaps some dead person or some demon. Something that perhaps deceived Father Gabriel. I wondered if Gabriel had simply been a victim of this force or if he had deliberately chosen to follow it. Be that as it may, the damage was already done. The diocese declared the estate to be in place and ordered it to be demolished, but even after it was reduced to rubble, there was still palpable tension in the village. Everyone avoided that place and inhabited it for many, many years. Although we never heard from Father Gabriel again, rumors about his whereabouts did not cease to circulate. Algunos dicen que había escapado a otra región donde continuaba ejerciendo su influencia sobre comunidades. Otros afirmaban haberlo visto en las cercanías del lago, siempre acompañado de las tres chicas que se habían ido con él. Yo por mi parte, decidí que no podía quedarme en el pueblo. Las sombras del pasado eran demasiado pesadas y sentía que, si no me alejaba, en algún punto terminaría atrapado en la misma espiral de desesperación. Con el tiempo mi familia también tomó la decisión de marcharse y, aunque han pasado muchos años desde those events, the scars are still present. My sister Laura, for example, never married, and every time I hear the sound of a church bell, I can't help but remember what I saw in that small town. We may never know the full truth about Father Gabriel and that mysterious force that told him he was God. All I know is that his legacy, though dark, will always be a warning to those who seek power under the guise of faith. Be very careful where you go.